Hi, so this video is just to talk through with you guys about the assignments for MS5102 and just to talk through the assessment briefs and look at what kind of things we'll be looking for when we're marking the assignments. So if we start off with 001, it's a 40% coursework, group work with 1600 words or equivalent that's due in by 14th of November. And don't forget, if you have any problems with the hand-in date, you can always talk to the help zone and they'll help you with any issues that you have with that. So if we look at the actual brief for the assessment, it's design a social media campaign for a particular segmentation, highlighting the best events in Gloucestershire. So just picking a particular target audience and working out in your campaign how you might promote events in Gloucestershire. Justify how you use persuasion architecture in your design and how you would measure outcomes. Now that's really important, those two elements, the persuasion architecture and the measurement and the justification of how you would use those things. And so that's covered in the assessment criteria here. So you must include the following: justification for your selected segmentation and marketplace context. So it's really important that I want you guys to have a look at who your audience are and the tone of voice that you might use in order to talk to them, and particularly in the context of the marketplace. So is the demographic that you've chosen the particularly appropriate for the event that you might have chosen? The selected key messages and justifications with comparisons. So again, what I want you to do is overview the campaign, talk about your persuasive storytelling methodologies, look at the justifications for that, give it some academic justification. I want you to do some research and use some theory behind that, and then compare with how other organisations have done events promotion, particularly for social media. And then a description of the visual content, the language and the justification. So again, within persuasion architecture, we need to be thinking about what images you're going to use, the language that you use, and how they relate to your segmentation. So some of you may remember I talked in the class about when you talk to your parents. That's a very different conversation quite often to the way that you talk to your friends. And so it's exactly the same kind of thing. We want to talk about what kind of images you might use, what kind of language, relating to the audience that you're talking to. And I need you to justify that within a theoretical realm as well. So looking at what the theories are of behaviour and the way that we respond to particular types of content. Then I need you to have a look at the calls to action. So what is it that your campaign is getting people to do? And then outline the persuasive drivers towards that action. So for example, if you're asking somebody to click on a particular thing, what is it that's going to make them click there? And again, what is your justification for that? So looking at consumer behaviour theory, looking at psychological and neurological drivers, and justifying really in that context how you would persuade somebody to do a particular action. And then finally, the all-important return on investment. How you so we need an outline of how you would measure effectiveness. And so I really need you to think about what key things you're going to measure, and really how they relate to defining the success of a campaign. So, special instructions for this assessment. The following should accompany the above. We need a visual representation of the elements of your campaign. So these don't need to be finished pieces, they don't need to be amazing pieces of graphic design, but they need to illustrate what your campaign messaging is going to be and the visual language. It can be created in any software that you want to use, but it must be delivered as a PDF. So most software will allow you to export as a PDF, or you can print as a PDF, so that shouldn't be a problem. Again, you need to put some thought into this, but it doesn't need an immense amount of time in kind of finishing the visual. If you suggest any interactive elements, they'll need to be included in your design as well, such as logos that you can click on, videos that you might want to have included in there, podcasts, anything else. And if you wanted to suggest gamification, which is a great way of using persuasion architecture, then an overview of the type of game and why it would fit in with your chosen brand and its audience. Now, obviously, when we talk about gamification, we don't we're not talking about making something a shoot 'em up or some kind of card game, that kind of thing. It's more in the way of kind of how do you engage your audience into doing an action for which they get some kind of reward. So it's a game in a very broad sociological sense. So that's roughly assessment 1. This should then, in terms of your learning outcomes, be able to help you look at designing a campaign, looking at segmentation, demographics, audience targeting, and then also allow you to look at, demonstrate that you've looked at measurement. All key things for marketing career. There's some stuff about offences here. Hopefully by now you guys know that you shouldn't be just copying other people's work, and you need to reference in the appropriate way. Okay, so let's have a look at assessment 2. That's 60% coursework, so it's the bigger assignment, and it's 2,400 words. Standard assignment, and it's due in 15th of January. So a bit of time after Christmas to get back into it. So the brief for this assessment is identify, analyse and evaluate an online campaign that you have chosen. Now, it's really important to think, actually, it doesn't necessarily need to be an online campaign that you think is particularly amazing or good. It could actually be one that you think is not particularly good. And in fact, in some ways, because you have to critically evaluate the campaign for effectiveness and indicate how that might be measured, that actually a campaign that has some problems with it would be easier for you to write about. So when we talk about effectiveness and indicate how that might be measured, again, we need to be thinking about return on investment, and that might be in terms of engagement. So if it's social media, if it's some kind of campaign that isn't about directly buying a product, how would you measure that effectiveness? And again, conversely, if it's a commercial endeavour, how you might measure the investment offset to the advertising costs. And how can an understanding of this campaign be useful for companies in another industry? So how might you take the learning from that campaign and apply it to another industry? What are the similarities across industries, and what are the techniques used in that particular campaign? Successful or not, because again, you might look at where something has failed, how it might be useful for companies in another industry to understand why that is not successful. So you're expected to explore the assignment subtopics in depth and identify and order a set of solutions within digital marketing. So when we look at that, what you'll need to do is demonstrate knowledge of the e-marketing and social environment. You need to kind of be able to pull in examples of how other companies have used marketing, some theory on how e-marketing works and how a social environment works. Identification of a suitable campaign and analysis thereof. So actually, part of the mark will be which campaign you choose, and so picking a campaign that you can really kind of pick apart will be something that will help you gain better marks in this. application of theory to the subject matter. So obviously we're not just looking for, oh, this picture looks really pretty, or this made the company lots of money. What we need to do is understand it within the context of marketing theory and the logic and standard of the whole essay. So it's your writing style, it's your standard, the way that you're using arguments to evidence and back up your statements. And then demonstrate the knowledge within these subtopics. So segmentation. So hopefully from the previous assignment, you'll have really got a grip on what we're talking about when we talk about segmentation, and particularly within digital marketing, how segmentation is a little bit more complex than with older forms of marketing. Marketing metrics, so again I'll be looking for demonstration that you understand what we mean by those different metrics and how they can be used, and the validity of each. I think again, analysis of validity is really important when you're talking about metrics. Drivers for consumer decision making, so linking back into your previous assignment, understanding persuasion architecture, understanding emotional drivers, understanding the general consumer behaviour, societal influences, all those things. We don't need an in-depth description of that, but what we need to do is see some kind of demonstration that you understand those theories. And brand visibility and the role of search engines. So also demonstrate some understanding that there is a great importance of a brand having visibility, how you might do that, how effective it is within this campaign, and the role of search engines, and how, for example, this campaign you're looking at may have used SEO to optimize its search results, how it's used search engines in terms of advertising, but also in terms of social influence, all those kind of things. And so I want to see how much you kind of understand just how important search engines are. And again, the standard offences apply. So again, please bear in mind, if you're going to reference people, reference pretty much anything basically, we need detail of the source. And obviously don't just copy from stuff. We need to hear it in your own words. And generally level 5, we need to look at a little bit more of your kind of critical thinking. You need to evaluate things. You need to demonstrate the understanding. So level 4 is about demonstrating just understanding, because you've listened to us, you've read the books, and then you're demonstrating that you've done that. Whereas here we're actually asking you to start doing some critical thinking, gearing you up for level 6, when you're going to kind of really have to ramp up your kind of levels of criticality. Okay, so I hope that's helped you guys understand what it is that we're looking for in the assessment brief. And like I keep saying to you, there's lots of stuff on Moodle. I will try and answer any questions as well that you have. So if you need to speak to me about the assessment, come and see me before or after class, or drop me an email. Okay, and I hope that helps. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.